I have been living with my new wife and stepdaughter for about 6 months now. She's 19, almost 20, and I have 3 sons aged 18, 16 and 15. She's a really good kid and she's a good influence on my sons. I really enjoy having her around. My wife and her daughter moved into my house and sold theirs. My stepdaughter's father isn't present in her life, nor is my son's mother. All 4 children share a bathroom. My sons have never lived for a long period of time with a woman, nor have any of them had long-term girlfriends. They had short visitation periods when they were younger but never longer than an hour. So living with 2 women has been unusual for them. My eldest son, 18, came to me last week and told me that his stepsister disposes of her used sanitary products in the trash can they share, but doesn't use toilet roll or sandwich bags to disguise what they are, and it makes him uncomfortable, which I think is reasonable. My sons are teenage boys and don't want to see their stepsister's period products on full display. A few nights ago I went into the kitchen to grab a snack and she was there doing some work for university. My wife had mentioned that she knew she was on her period, so I took it as an opportunity to have a word with her. I told her my sons were uncomfortable and asked her if she'd mind putting her used products in diaper bags or flushing them down the toilet. She laughed and told me it was rich coming from a man who sheds like a gorilla and has produced 3 skid-marking sons, which I thought was just an unnecessary attack. I've been nothing but nice to the girl and it's hardly a comparison. My sons shouldn't be subjected to her unhygienic products if it makes them uncomfortable. She went on to lecture me about how tampons can't be flushed and that it's bad for the environment if she uses diaper bags for everyone, which I think is just an excuse. I called her a scruff and told her that this was my house and that what I say goes. I later asked my wife if she could have a word with her and she told me I was being ridiculous and that her daughter has had her period for 10 years and knows what she's doing. When I told her it was making my sons uncomfortable, she said my sons needed to get a grip and turned over and went to sleep. This is a genuine issue to me and she didn't care enough to have a discussion about it. I asked my stepdaughter again in the morning and she did the same as her mother, completely dismissed it. Both of them have told me to stop being so silly, but I don't see how I'm being unreasonable when it makes my sons uncomfortable. My husband Derek and I have been married for 3 years, together for 7 total. Several years ago, about 6 now, I guess, I worked closely with a male coworker, Paul, that Derek was never fond of. Paul and I never had an inappropriate relationship. Derek's jealousy wasn't completely out of nowhere. I get why he felt that way. Those couple years were a perfect storm of relationship stress. I was working long hours. We were living apart after trying and failing to move in together. Our relationship was still fairly new. And then you add in a handsome coworker I had to spend long hours with and saw more than my boyfriend at the time. Paul was the source of several fights. Again, we never did anything that wasn't completely kosher. Eventually I told Derek he needed to trust me and get over it, or we were going to have to break up. He said he would stop worrying, and for the most part things were good. When Paul transferred out of state a few months later, things were really good. There were no worries at all and our relationship has been amazingly strong ever since. This last weekend, my husband went out with a couple friends to some bars and a football game. When he came home, he was pretty wasted. We talked for a bit, and he mentioned how a friend of his had told him that he broke up with his girlfriend because she cheated on him. I commented on how that was a bummer and good for him for finding out before they got too serious. Derek, however, had a different take on it. He said it was a shame because they had seemed like a good couple and if they really loved each other his friend could move past the cheating. Just like he had with me. At first I thought my husband was admitting to cheating on me, and asked him what he meant. He told me he always knew that Paul and I had slept together at least once all those years ago. But he knew I was the one for him and forgave me. I told Derek that I had never so much as even hugged Paul, except maybe at his going away party, let alone slept with him. Derek sort of just patted me on the arm, said of course, and passed out. The next morning I asked him about the conversation and he said it was okay, he had forgiven me, it wasn't even an issue. I again stressed that I had never cheated on him with anybody and I needed him to believe me. He sort of did the same, of course you didn't, babe wink thing again and went to work. Every time I've tried to talk to him since, he won't hear me out. I'm this close to losing it with him. I need him to know that I never cheated, and I'm hurt that he thinks I would do something like that. What do I do? Do I just let him have this since it's not really hurting anything, or what? I don't want my own husband to think so little of me that he thinks I would cheat. That's not who I am. I am a 30-year-old male, and I got married 2 weeks ago. I was married before, but it ended after I found out that my older brother Thomas, 34 years old, got involved with my first wife. It was devastating because we were close and had a great relationship. I also helped him so much while he was struggling, and seeing how he repaid me hurts to this very day. I stopped talking to him, and Mom and Dad forced me to keep it a secret, and because I was too weak to argue with them, I just kept my own distance. Then I met my now wife. My family loved and embraced her as their own. Mom and Dad treat her like a queen, which helped repair and solidified my relationship with them. However, as the wedding was approaching, they told me they expected me to invite Thomas. I of course refused, but they kept guilting me about what the relatives and other guests would think and say when they don't see Thomas there. I fought with them about it till the day of the wedding. Turned out they'd invited him behind my back, but I found out and stopped them in time. They came to the wedding looking pissed, asking what we were going to tell people when they ask about Thomas. I told them I'd take care of it. And what I did was take a moment while everyone was paying attention, grabbed the mic and flat out announced this and said, "The reason I didn't invite Thomas to my wedding is because I was worried he'd steal my now wife just like he stole the first one." I said it playfully to not make it sound so tense, but most of the guests looked shocked and started mumbling. Then it went awkwardly quiet for a moment. Then we moved on, but I saw Mom and Dad walk out while looking at me grudgingly. Later they started lashing out about how I just exposed Thomas and caused him to be shunned by the family in the most hideous of ways. I told them that I already said I didn't want him there, yet they tried to push him on me repeatedly, saying, "What are people going to say?" So I told them the reason why he wasn't there in a playful way, but they, the guests, still got the message. Mom started yelling about how everyone will now look down on and shun Thomas. She called me pathetic and cruel for still punishing him and gradually ruining his life despite him apologizing and trying to reconcile. But in my opinion, some things are just unforgivable. We've been on horrible terms since then. My wife said at least now they're off my back about what people would say about not inviting him. Back in November 2018, I was arrested at work in front of my boss and coworkers. It was the most humiliating thing I've ever experienced. I later learned at the police station that I was being charged with multiple felonies. This came as a huge surprise. Luckily, I was able to keep my wits and lawyer up instead of speaking with the detective. For $13,000, which completely wiped my savings, I was able to retain a criminal defense attorney. However, it cost me everything, and I was unable to pay my bond. This resulted in me staying in jail for a total of 54 days. At a status hearing, my attorney presented video evidence of me gassing up my car 3 hours away from where the crimes took place, and I ended up having all my charges dismissed. When I finally got out, I learned that I had lost my job, was in the process of being evicted, and my son was in the state's care. His mother is a heroin addict, and I haven't spoken to my own parents in nearly 15 years. They wouldn't let him go to my girlfriend because they didn't consider her family. Since my release, I've learned that I can't sue the police, and no one gives a shit that I was locked up for 54 days because the detective did poor investigation work. I've gone to the local press about this and was told that what happened to me happens quite a bit. They took down my info but never followed up. So what I did was create a website sharing my story. I also uploaded the police report and some other documents from the discovery. Literally, the only reason why I was arrested was because an eyewitness said they saw me. If the detective had done his job, he could have verified that I wasn't even in town on the day the crimes took place. This is what pisses me off the most. My life was ruined because of a lazy employee. My website is now ranked number 2 on the first page of search results when you type in my town's name. I live in a touristy town, and we attract a lot of visitors over the summer. My web traffic has more than quadrupled, and apparently it's gotten someone high up's attention. I received a cease and desist letter recently, which I showed to my attorney. He said sharing my experience online isn't illegal and that everything I had stated was a fact or my own opinion, protecting me from a defamation lawsuit. Yesterday I received a visit from 2 officers and the detective who had arrested me. He apologized, stating mistakes can happen. They then talked to me about my website and asked if I could remove it. I said I would delete it on the condition that the detective leave his job and never do police work again. Suffice to say that isn't happening. After the visit I received, I'm more pissed off that the only reason the detective apologized to me was to get me to take down my website. I don't plan to, and the only one supporting this is my girlfriend. My friends think I'm being spiteful and have suggested that I just delete it.